Now, as we follow all of the latest developments here, we have been speaking with folks all over the world. And I do want to bring in Eylon Levy, the former Israeli government spokesperson there on the ground over in Israel. Eylon, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Pleasure to join you. We had a missile siren about an hour ago, and I hope we'll be able to get through this interview without another one.
And as I always say, if a missile is overhead firing that way, you have sirens, run.
Oh, I'm out. I'm out.
No, as you should be. And Eylon, I wanted to ask you kind of, and you just touched on it, but what the situation has been like on the ground there over the past 6 days and how it compares to the situation prior to that.
Israelis are beginning to return to normal life. The state of emergency has been relaxed. The gyms are open, restaurants are open, stores are open. Workplaces are allowed to employ people if they can get to a shelter in time. And Israelis are trying to get back to their normal lives as much as possible. In the first few days, the Iranian regime was able to fire many more ballistic missiles at us. They can't now because the joint US-Israeli coalition is bombing those ballistic missile launchers and keeping the whole Middle East safe. That is why we're seeing fewer ballistic missiles. There is tension, there is anxiety. It is very stressful to run to shelter in the middle of the night if you have to run and grab children from bed, or you are elderly or disabled or otherwise vulnerable. But morale here is very high because Iran has not been able to inflict the damage that it wanted. People are dead, buildings have been destroyed, but it hasn't been able to inflict the damage it wanted to because Israel and the United States together, the two most powerful air forces in the world, as Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio have said, control the skies of Iran, and they're bombing the regime without mercy now.
One thing that's interesting is the IRGC is now claiming that some of the missiles that they're firing there at Israel have one-ton warheads on them. Is that, in your opinion, what you've seen, just kind of an empty threat? Is that concerning for folks there at all?
No, the Iranian regime is trying to kill as many people as possible. In recent days, it has been firing ballistic missiles with cluster submunitions. I'll explain what that is to people who aren't military experts. It means the missile explodes above ground, mid-air, and shatters into dozens of smaller bombs that will explode when they hit the ground. These weapons are by definition indiscriminate. They are by definition an attempt to kill as many civilians as possible. And that is why Israel and the United States are determined to destroy the Iranian regime's ability to wage aggression, so they cannot continue to target our civilians with such indiscriminate attacks.
What is maybe one misconception you think people have about this situation, whether we're talking about in the U.S., in Israel, or anywhere around the world, that you want to make sure is kind of cleared up for folks?
Yeah, there is this bizarre misconception that this war wasn't needed now because the threat of a nuclear Iran wasn't imminent. It was. Iran was close to reaching strategic invulnerability. That means it was building so many ballistic missiles and burying them so far underground that it would soon be impossible even for the mighty US military to confront the Iranian nuclear program because no one could touch it. And the Iranian regime would then develop nuclear weapons with which to threaten and blackmail the United States and attack its neighbors. So all those spreading the bizarre conspiracy theories that Israel somehow pushed the United States into this war need to listen very closely to what America's leaders have been saying, that this operation had to happen, and it had to happen sooner rather than later.
What does all of this say about the U.S. and Israel relationship? We know that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have been very close. They have had nice things to say about each other, especially over the last year or so. So what does all of this kind of tell us about the relationship as a whole?
Israel and the United States do not have a relationship. They have an alliance. And Secretary Hegseth said yesterday, it is a breath of fresh air to be fighting side by side, shoulder to shoulder, with such a capable ally. Israel is a force multiplier for the United States. And that's because Israel has the second most powerful air force in the world. And it is fighting on the side of the United States to bomb the bad guys who wish death to America and death to Israel. So I think everyone needs to understand that Israel and the United States fighting together make each other stronger and make the world a much safer place by targeting the bad people who want all of us dead.
As we kind of watch all of this continue to play out, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the situation on the ground. Of course, talking about these sirens and the things of that nature, does it appear that they are kind of going off, I would say, on an hourly basis? Is it a constant? Because we know that Iran's missiles have been severely depleted, let's say, over the past several days. So is that still something where you hear that and you know, I need to go get to a shelter immediately?
The situation on the ground is that Iran has been lashing out in every direction, attacking not just Israel, but Gulf countries as well. In fact, sending more missiles at the United Arab Emirates than at Israel. They are still armed. They are still dangerous. I mean, last night we had 3 sirens in the space of about an hour and a half. It means 2 o'clock in the morning, sirens. You run downstairs to your bomb shelter if you have one in your building, or to the nearest public shelter. You get the all clear, you go back to sleep. 10 minutes later, another siren. You grab your children, you run downstairs, you get an all clear, you go back upstairs, and then 10 minutes later there is another siren and you run back into the streets to go to a local bomb shelter. Israel is determined to end the threat of the Iranian regime once and for all. You cannot have the Iranian regime continuing to destabilize the region by deciding to launch ballistic missiles with cluster submunitions at our cities whenever they want. And that is why people here are in generally good spirits and trying to say, we're going to get on with our lives as much as we can. When there are sirens, then we will be disciplined and we will run for shelter. But we're determined to allow our army, together with the United States, that coalition, to finish the job against the evil Iranian regime so that it can't wake us 3 times in an hour anymore, ever again.
All right. Eylon, Levy, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here. Anything we missed? Anything that you want to make sure to add before I let you go?
I think Americans need to understand that the war against Iran is happening in a bigger context of the geopolitical rivalry with China. China buys most of Iran's oil. China supplies most of Iran's high-tech missiles with which they want to attack American troops. And therefore, when the United States is targeting Iran's leadership, it is not only helping to keep the Middle East safer, it is knocking out a radical actor that China was building up in order to distract the United States and keep it bogged down. And so knocking out the Iranian regime not only makes the Middle East safer, it also makes the world safer by freeing up America's resources to stand up to the #1 geopolitical threat, which is communist China.
All right. Eylon, Levy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Stay safe over there.
Thank you, Josh.